On my birthday. Only after I severed ties with my parents did they finally realize that they had no idea where my room was. They searched around the house, but found nothing. In the end, it was the housekeeper who led them to the storage room where I had lived for 8 years. Sir, madam, young ladies, this is young Master Yifeng's room. Under everyone's bewildered gazes, the housekeeper pushed the door open. A tiny, cramped space was revealed before their eyes. They stared in stunned silence at the pitifully small room. The door itself bore a sign that read, "Storage Room." Yifeng, why is he living here? Mother Chu, Milan, murmured in disbelief. Father Chu Mohan furrowed his brows tightly. His voice was laced with displeasure as he questioned the housekeeper. What is the meaning of this? Why is Yifeng living in a storage room? The housekeeper let out a silent sigh and spoke truthfully. Sir, young Master Yifeng moved into this storage room when he was 8. He has lived here for 8 years now. To be honest, this tiny storage room is even smaller than my own living quarters as a housekeeper. And inside, there is barely anything at all. Milan and Chu Mohan exchanged a stunned glance. At that moment, they remembered. When Yifeng was 8 years old, they had adopted Xiaoyu. And Xiaoyu had taken a liking to Yifeng's spacious room. Back then, they had intended to set up another big room for Yifeng. But somehow, they had forgotten. And that single lapse turned into an 8-year neglect. A flicker of guilt flashed across Milan and Chu Mohan's eyes. Yifeng was their biological son. Yet in the Grand Chu household, he had been living in a tiny storage room for 8 years. They had wronged him. One by one, they stepped into the room. And what they saw was completely different from what they had imagined. The room was incredibly small. Aside from a narrow bed, there was only a simple wardrobe, a small table, and a tiny stool. The blanket on the bed was thin. It was impossible to imagine how he had endured all these years. With just 5 people standing inside, the space already felt unbearably cramped. The 3 sisters seeing this scene were equally shocked. Their rooms, as well as Xiaoyu's, were spacious and bright, with excellent natural lighting. Every detail in their rooms had been carefully designed by designed meticulously by professional designers. Comfortable yet luxurious. After all, the Chu family was wealthy. Money was never an issue. Yet, as children of the same family, they could hardly fathom that I had been living in such a cramped and oppressive storage room. Though the room was small, it was kept immaculately tidy. The thin blanket was neatly folded on the bed. The wardrobe door stood ajar. Inside, it was utterly empty. A small desk lamp sat atop the desk. It was evident that this was where I did my homework and read. Beside the lamp lay a bank card. Milan recognized it immediately. It was the birthday gift she had given me as a child. And yet, I hadn't taken it with me. Not even a bank card? Is Chu Yifeng planning to starve to death out there? Chu Menki scoffed with irritation. Although bank cards could now be linked to mobile payments, this particular card was registered under their mother's name. Each of them had one, leaving the bank card behind at home. Was I not afraid that my mother would cancel the account? With trembling hands, Milan picked up the bank card, hurriedly unlocking her phone to check its transaction history. The rest of the Chu family, understanding her intent, gathered around to look. She unlocked her phone and clicked on the account that had remained untouched for 8 years. The moment the screen loaded, everyone was utterly stunned. The balance in the account, aside from the 200,000 that Milan had just transferred in, was completely empty. For 8 years, there had been no transactions at all. The last recorded expense had been 6 years ago, and the last deposit was 8 years ago. In other words, as early as 6 years ago, at just 10 years old, I had stopped using this bank card entirely. When was the last time any of you gave Yifeng cash? Chu Mohan's voice was strained. The room fell into an oppressive silence. A long time passed before Milan finally answered. 8 years ago. The 3 Chu sisters were equally stunned. They all spoke at once. So were we. Chu Mohan murmured in disbelief. I was the same. For 8 years, I never gave him a single cent. Then how did he survive all these years? Wanning, equally in disbelief, murmured. At this moment, the housekeeper, who had been standing quietly to the side, could no longer hold back. She had worked as a maid in the Chu family for over 20 years, since even before the eldest daughter was born. She had been part of the Chu family. With a heart full of sympathy, she said, "Sir, madam, ever since you adopted the little master, young Master Yifeng has often stayed in this storage room and has often caused you to worrying. He was often hungry and couldn't even get enough food. For the first couple of years, things weren't as bad. Young Master Yifeng would buy some bread or other snacks to fill his stomach. But when his money ran out, after being hungry for a while, one day when I went out to buy groceries, I found him washing dishes at a restaurant outside. He was just 10 years old." Milan gasped, her voice filled with disbelief. The housekeeper nodded. At that time, young Master Yifeng was still small. He couldn't earn much money. I would often secretly give him some bread to eat. Later, as young Master Yifeng grew older, he was able to earn money and buy bread on his own. The Chu family stood frozen, shocked. 10 years old? I actually went outside to wash dishes and did that for an 8-year part-time job? When they were 10, they were still in their mother's arms, spoiled and pampered. They never lacked any delicious food and had unlimited amounts of money. But their own younger brother, Chu Yifeng, had to resort to his delicate hands to work and earn money for bread. Chu Mohan shouted angrily, "Such a huge matter. Why didn't you tell me?" The housekeeper flinched at his outburst. She hurriedly explained, "When I found him, young Master Yifeng saw me too. He begged me not to tell you." Chu Mohan stood rooted to the spot, stunned. "I remember now. A few years ago, a hotel owner told me there was a young boy washing dishes in their kitchen who looked like Yifeng. I didn't pay much attention at the time. I never imagined he would be working to wash dishes to make money. Until this very moment." Chu Mohan finally acknowledged the painful truth. "I never realized that Yifeng had been suffering like this in the Chu household." He was filled with regret. "If I had gone to see him back then, I would never have let him suffer for all these years." Milan sobbed as she spoke. "It's our fault. We were too strict with him. He cares too little for him. It makes him afraid to tell us." Chu Wanning sighed. She had once unintentionally seen my rough hands. At that time, although she had doubts, she had long since gotten used to showing me a cold face. So she didn't ask me about it. When my parents said I was bullied today, and that I had been injured, the small storage room had a heavy atmosphere. Chu Yiyao seemed to be deep in thought, but didn't speak. Chu Menki was somewhat moved inside, but still looked down on me. Maybe this is my act of self-sacrifice. At the corner of the door, where they couldn't see, Chu Ziyu's body was stiff. His fists clenched tightly. He had thought that if he drove me out, this home would truly belong to him. But unexpectedly, after I left, they began to care about me instead. Chu Ziyu took a deep breath, suppressing the anger and jealousy in his heart. He pretended to have just woken up and rounded the corner to appear in front of everyone. "Dad, Mom, you're back." His voice was weak and powerless, his body leaning against the door frame, as if he would collapse at any moment. "Xiao Yu!" Chu Mohan exclaimed, hastily stepping forward to support Chu Ziyu, softly asking, "Are you feeling unwell again?" Chu Ziyu pressed his chest, weakly nodded his head. "I'm fine. Just need to rest for a while." Chu Ziyu's complexion was rosy. There wasn't a trace of weakness in his appearance, but his clumsy acting was enough to fool the Chu family. In his weakness, he still didn't forget to ask, "How is Yifeng, brother? Is he all right?" Milan and Ju heard Chu Ziyu's voice and stopped crying. They walked over to Chu Ziyu, hesitated for a moment, then asked, "Xiao Yu, tell Mom the truth. Why did you bring people to beat Yifeng?" As soon as this was said, the three sisters were shocked. They only knew that Chu Yifeng had indeed been beaten, and that it was done by a group of people, but they never expected that the leader would be Xiaoyu. Chu Ziyu's hand, which hung at his side, suddenly tightened, but he quickly adjusted his emotions, innocently and wrongfully saying, "Mom, how could you say that? No matter what, Yifeng is my brother. How could I bring people to beat him?" As he spoke, his eyes quickly filled with tears. It was as if he had suffered a great injustice. However, this time, Milan and Chu Mohan did not comfort him immediately as they used to. Their movements paused. Milan furrowed her brows and said, "But we watched the surveillance footage. It was indeed you who led the group in beating Yifeng." Chu Ziyu's hands unconsciously clenched tightly. Shock surged in his heart. Surveillance footage? There was actually surveillance. He usually bullied me in places without cameras, like bathrooms and alleys. How could there be surveillance? He tried to recall the places where he had previously bullied me. It seemed that a few times it was in the hallway. Before Chu Ziyu could say anything, Chu Menki quickly said, "Mom and Dad, today's videos can be faked too. How do you know that the footage you saw is real?" Compared to Chu Menki, Chu Yiyao was slightly more composed. She furrowed her brows and asked, "Mom and Dad, where did you see the surveillance footage? Could it be that Chu Yifeng had someone tamper with it?" Before finishing her sentence, everyone in the room understood what she meant. She was firmly unconvinced that Xiaoyu would lead people to bully me. Xiaoyu was so gentle and obedient. How could he possibly take the initiative to bully someone else? On the other hand, I was the one who made friends with a bunch of thugs outside, getting into fights every day. I seemed more like the one bullying others. Chu Mohan directly shattered their assumptions. "We saw it at the police station. Director Yang personally showed it to us." Upon hearing this name, Chu Wanning immediately furrowed her brows. She had been running the company for some time now, and naturally knew of Director Yang. This Director Yang was no ordinary precinct director, since it was him who personally showed the footage to Mom and Dad. Then Xiaoyu. Could it be? Chu Wanning was the most composed among the three sisters. She quietly observed Chu Ziyu, although Chu Ziyu's odd behavior was not obvious. It still did not escape her notice. A trace of panic flashed in Chu Ziyu's eyes. But as expected, he was skilled at concealing himself. He quickly stabilized his emotions. Tears streamed down his face. He looked at everyone with an expression of disbelief. His voice choked. "Mom, Dad, eldest sister, second sister, third sister, do you not believe me?" Looking at his expression, Chu Mohan and Milan's hearts softened instantly. Milan quickly wiped away his tears. "Xiaoyu, we're not saying we don't believe you. We know you must have a reason. We just want to ask, why did this happen?" Chu Mohan's gaze also softened noticeably. Only Chu Mohan, looking at Chu Ziyu, whose eyes were full of tears, furrowed his brows. "In 3 days, Xiaoyu will be 16 years old. He's already a young man. Yifeng started working and supporting himself at 10 years old. All these years, although he was scolded and beaten, we've never seen him shed a single tear. Yet Xiaoyu cries at the drop of a hat." This was the first time Chu Wannian saw Chu Ziyu cry, and she felt no impulse to comfort him. In fact, there was a trace of annoyance. Chu Menki spoke impatiently. What else could it be? Yifeng fights every day at school. He must have been bullying Xiaoyu there as well, and Xiaoyu forced to fight back. Upon hearing this, everyone immediately became tense. Milan quickly scanned Chu Ziyu from top to bottom. "Xiaoyu, did he bully you? Are you okay? Were you injured?" The Chu family was all on edge. Only Chu Wannian's eyes were filled with doubt. After all, the surveillance footage from Director Yang only showed part of the story. Who knows what else happened in places they couldn't see? A gleam of triumph flashed in Chu Ziyu's lowered eyes, and he thought, "Hey, I don't even have to come up with an excuse." He bit his lip tightly, saying nothing. Not a word came from his mouth. Yet it seemed as though he had said everything. Everyone looked at each other and saw clearly. What more was there to understand? He actually dared to bully Xiaoyu at school. Such audacity. After bullying Xiaoyu, he tried to turn the tables, taking advantage of Xiaoyu being hospitalized and calling the police, trying to have Xiaoyu imprisoned. Thankfully, Xiaoyu isn't yet 16. Otherwise, he would have fallen for his trick. And yet they still felt sorry for me. Chu Mohan and Milan instantly regretted it. But thankfully, Xiaoyu knew how to fight back. Otherwise, who knows how badly I'd have been bullied. The maid was stunned by this scene, her eyes wide with shock. As far as she knew, young Master Yifeng had suffered quite a few injuries. But young Master Xiaoyu, from childhood until now, even when there was just a slight scratch, he would go to Madame to seek comfort and sympathy. If he had really been bullied by young Master Yifeng, how could he have endured it? If he had been bullied, he would have caused a huge scene, and everyone would have known about it. But only in this family do they fail to distinguish right from wrong and are easily deceived by him. The next day, I woke up early. Today was a special day. In my previous life, I never bought lottery tickets. But today, when I passed by a lottery shop, I was drawn in by the winning information displayed outside. Though the prize money wasn't much, for someone like me who could barely make ends meet, it was incredibly tempting. My heart filled with anticipation, and I memorized the winning number. After a quick wash, I bought a steamed bun from a vendor by the roadside. Then I headed to the lottery shop. I was penniless now, with only 2 yuan left on me. The urgent task was to get my first bit of money. With money, I could then begin executing the plan that was waiting. The lottery shop was a bit far from the school. I couldn't afford the bus fare, so I treated it as my morning exercise. After running for nearly half an hour, I finally arrived at the lottery shop. I was out of breath, almost about to collapse. At 16, I should have been full of energy, but due to long-term malnutrition, I was skin and bones. The long run left me exhausted. I finally stumbled to the counter, handing the shopkeeper the 2 yuan I had left. I thought for a moment, then gave him the numbers I had memorized. The shopkeeper skillfully entered the numbers into the computer, then handed me the printed ticket. Taking the ticket, I fell into a long wait. Time passed second by second. I was very nervous. I hoped I hadn't misremembered the numbers. For me, time had already passed 7 or 8 years. I wasn't sure if I had made a mistake. I stared intently at the screen, and there were many other lottery players just like me. Only 1 minute left until the draw. The atmosphere in the lottery shop was at its peak of tension. The players tightly gripped their tickets, repeatedly muttering the numbers in their heads. Finally, the draw time arrived. I was nervously staring at the screen, when suddenly my phone rang. I looked at the screen. It was actually a call from Chu Wanning. I guessed that Chu Zhu must have said something at home, and now she was calling me so early. I didn't want to waste time with her. Without hesitation, I hung up the phone. On the other end, Chu Wanning stared at her phone in disbelief. She couldn't believe I dared to hang up on her. In the past, even when she called to scold me, I would only obediently listen, never daring to hang up, let alone hanging up on her first. But now, I had just done it. Anger surged in Chu Wanning's heart. She glanced at the closed dormitory door, furrowing her brows tightly. It was so late yesterday, and now, early this morning, she came to school to find me. She even specifically asked around for my dorm room location, desperately wanting to see me and ask me what was going on. But I had no idea where I was going. It was a Sunday, and I wasn't in my dorm this early. Chu Wanning dialed a few more times, but each time, I hung up immediately. In the end, I simply blocked Chu Wanning's number. The world became quiet. I returned my focus to the screen. One number after another slowly appeared on the big screen. Knowingly, my palms were covered in sweat. My gaze moved back and forth between the screen and the numbers in my hand. It matched. The first number matched. The second number matched too. The third number also matched. Finally, all the numbers were out. I let out a long breath. I hadn't made a mistake. Not a single number was wrong. In the lottery shop, there were sighs and groans all around. But I was in an extraordinarily good mood. A smile involuntarily spread across my face. Although the prize wasn't much, it was enough. This was the only set of numbers I could remember. I didn't even pay attention to the big prize numbers. With excitement, I walked up to the counter and said, "Boss, I've won. Please help me claim the prize." My words were like a thunderclap in the lottery shop. Everyone turned to look at me. I really won the lottery. They'd been buying tickets for so long, but none of them had ever won anything. And this stranger came in and won right away. People couldn't help but start guessing how much I won. The shop owner was also surprised, quickly took my ticket and checked it. I really won. And the amount was no small sum, a full 10,000 yuan. "Young man, you're lucky," he said. "You won 71,000 yuan. The other players who hadn't won all shot envious glances at me. In the crowd, there was admiration, jealousy, and most of all, envy. In this round of lottery, only I had one. A man about 30 years old, with a careless demeanor, walked over. He looked me up and down. "Young man, I've never seen you before. Is this your first time buying a lottery ticket?" I didn't bother engaging much, simply nodding slightly, getting the confirmation. The man smiled slyly and moved a little closer. "To win such a big prize the first time, what's your secret? Tell me, big brother." His tone clearly had a hint of threat and mockery. The shop owner froze for a moment while counting the money, then turned to ask me, 10,000 yuan is just right for exchange here. Do you have a bank card? I can transfer it to your card." I ignored the man, shook my head, and told the shop owner, "Just give me cash." The man standing aside saw the gleaming cash, and his eyes lit up. He didn't say much, just quietly waited for me to leave the shop. Not long after I left, he followed me. I headed straight for the bank with the money. I was 16 now. I could independently apply for a bank card. As I walked down a deserted alley, the thug from the lottery shop suddenly emerged. He was holding a stick, with a wicked grin, slowly approaching me. "Kid, what a coincidence meeting you here." I furrowed my brow. "As long as you hand over the money, I won't hit you. How about it?" I watched him warily and instantly understood he was planning to rob me. "You've got hands and feet. Why don't you do something good? Why resort to this illegal act?" "Hey, ha 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 ha." The thug suddenly burst into laughter. "Robbery gets money quickly. Who's foolish enough to do that hard labor work? Aren't you afraid of going to jail?" I kept negotiating with him. At the same time, I scanned the surroundings. I was looking for a suitable weapon. I wasn't sure about this thug's strength. Did he know any fighting skills? He was still holding a stick in his hand. Better to be cautious. The thug sneered. "I've been to jail before. What's there to be afraid of?" "Oh, really?" I suddenly smirked maliciously. A stick suddenly appeared in my hand. I pivoted on the tips of my toes. I charged straight at the thug. The thug never expected that this kid would take the initiative to attack. In a moment of confusion, he took a solid blow from my stick. The thug winced in pain. He quickly reacted. He grabbed the stick in his hand and started fighting back. This thug had indeed practiced before. Compared to Liu Xing's people, he knew more fighting techniques. It was probably because he'd been living on the streets for so long, practicing in real-life combat, while I had received professional training. My body at 16 was too malnourished. I didn't have the same stamina as the thug. For a moment, neither of us could gain the upper hand. I secretly grew anxious. I didn't have the strength to keep up with him. I had to end this quickly. During the fight, I suddenly noticed a small electric wire by the wall. There was no choice left. The 10,000 yuan I had on me was my only money. I hardened my heart. I waited for the right moment, stepping on the wire with my left foot. I yanked it with my right hand. The wire was snapped in half by my pull. I didn't hesitate. I immediately wrapped the broken end of the wire around the thug. At the same time, I quickly backed off. I distanced myself from the thug. The thug's stick was still raised high, ready to strike my head. Suddenly, an electric current surged through his body. The thug felt his body go numb. Before he could even curse, his eyes went blank. His body collapsed. I immediately pulled the wire off him. I tossed it aside. He slumped to the ground, gasping for air. The thug was really shocked this time. If the wire hadn't been low voltage, and if the shock had lasted longer, he might have lost his life. I didn't intend to kill him. Killing someone is illegal. I certainly didn't want to seek death. After catching my breath, I immediately called the police. I didn't know when, but my chest and skin had been scratched. It was still bleeding. Luckily, it was just a superficial wound, nothing serious. I patted my bag. The money was still there. Not long after, the police arrived. Coincidentally, the officer leading the group was the same one from last time. As soon as he got out of the car, he saw me leaning against the wall. He furrowed his brows. "How is it you again?" I gave a weak smile. "Yeah, what a coincidence." The officer came over to help me up. "Are you okay? Are you injured? Did you call the police?" While waiting for the police, we gained some strength. I nodded. "I'm fine. I called the police. He tried to rob me." Other officers quickly restrained the thug, who had just recovered and tried to get up and escape. Seeing his face, the officers immediately understood he was a repeat offender. He had only recently gotten out of prison and still hadn't repented. The officer who had helped me couldn't help but feel a bit of sympathy. This kid really has it rough. He was bullied on his birthday yesterday, and now he's been robbed today. Both the thug and I were taken back to the police station. I had my wound bandaged. After giving my statement, I left the station because the thug didn't reform and had intentionally hurt someone. He would be locked up for at least 10 years. The exact details would be determined after the procedure. There was no need for me to stay at the police station. I left right after completing my report. I looked at the bandages on my body. The leading officer asked, "Where are you heading?" "I'll give you a ride." After being a cop for so many years, he had seen many victims, normally boys my age, who'd been through so much and suffered so many grievances, would have collapsed by now. But I handled it calmly, without shouting or crying, with a clear mind. He had never seen someone like me. The officer couldn't help but develop a lot of respect for me. This young man's resilience is extraordinary. I nodded. Thanks then. A lot of people had seen me win 10,000 yuan. I knew how I looked right now. My external appearance probably made me seem easy to bully. I said, "I'm heading to the bank." "All right." The officer opened the car door first. He gestured for me to get in. I didn't hesitate. I followed closely and got in the car. I fastened my seatbelt. He couldn't help but say, "My name is Yan Guoan. You can just call me by my name." "Yan Guoan." I muttered the name aloud. I was shocked in my heart. I was very familiar with the name Yan Guoan from my past life. He was an upright man. He had outstanding abilities. In just a few short years, he rose from an ordinary police officer to become the head of the police department in Nanchang. He was a young man with great achievements. In the high society circles, everyone knew him. But in my past life, I had never met him. I never expected that in this new life, I would actually cross paths with him. I couldn't help but feel a bit more respect for him. "You're a few years older than me. I'll call you Brother Yan then. If I wanted to become stronger, I would inevitably need to deal with people from the government. Building a good relationship with him would be incredibly beneficial to me. Yan Guoan laughed heartily. Ha ha ha! Although we had only known each other for less than 2 days, the resilience and calmness I displayed without arrogance or impatience made Yan Guoan greatly admire me. He was certain that this young man would achieve something extraordinary in the future. We chatted casually all the way. The more we talked, the more Yan Guoan felt that this young man was exactly his type. Many of my ideas perfectly matched his. When we arrived at the bank, Yan Guoan cheerfully opened the car door. This is close to your school. I'll leave you here. I have something else to do, so I'll head back to the police station. I got out of the car, thanking Yan Guoan repeatedly. Yan Guoan waved it off. No need to be so polite. It's nothing, just a small favor. After saying goodbye to Yan Guoan, I walked into the bank. Before leaving, I made sure to bring my ID card with me. The process of getting my bank card went smoothly. I deposited all 10,000 yuan into the account. After all, having a bank card is more convenient than carrying cash. After leaving the bank, I headed straight to Digital City. I didn't waste any time. Using the memories from my past life, I bought the computer I was most familiar with in my previous life. Then I went straight to the dormitory. I skillfully turned on the computer. I registered an account with a securities company. I opened the familiar webpage from my past life. I found a newly listed stock that was set to skyrocket in the coming days. This kind of stock has no limit on how much it can rise or fall. It's perfect for making quick money. Right now, this stock was just an insignificant, ordinary existence. But in a couple of days, it would be completely different. I checked the time, a smile forming on my face. It really was the perfect time to be reborn. Unfortunately, I didn't have enough money on me now. Even if it multiplied by dozens of times, it wouldn't amount to much. But it's okay. Being reborn felt like I had already gotten the script in advance. There would be plenty of opportunities in the future. I closed the computer and leisurely took out my notebook to start doing problems. Ziyu's grades weren't particularly good. He was barely considered above average in the class. He told the Chu family that it was because of his poor health that his grades were hard to improve. My grades weren't great either, but I always scored higher than Ziyu in every exam. But every time we brought our test papers home, they would only praise Ziyu, rewarding him with all sorts of things for his hard work. And despite my grades being higher than Ziyu's, I was always ignored. In my past life, I was deeply saddened by this. I worked hard to improve my grades, hoping they would notice me just once. When I drowned in the sea, I understood, no matter how good my grades were, the Chu family would never pay attention to me. I had already realized that studying hard was for myself, not for anyone else's approval. The sky quickly darkened. In my past life, I overexerted myself for studies and work, constantly draining my body. This caused me to have illnesses at a young age. In this life, I vowed to cherish my health. I stretched lazily. My injuries still hadn't healed. It hurt whenever I moved, causing me to wince in pain. I massaged my sore body. After washing up, I collapsed into bed and fell asleep. The next day, I stood in the dormitory hallway, looking at everything in front of me. For the first time, I realized how wonderful the school was. In my past life, I had been bullied for a long time. Too afraid to fight back, I walked with my head down, wishing that no one would see me. I had never realized how beautiful the campus was. I took a deep breath of fresh air. Then I walked toward the classroom. Inside the classroom, the students were having an intense discussion about something. Did you hear? Chu Yifeng actually called the police. I heard. Liu Crossing and the others are still at the police station being detained. He actually dared to call the police. Isn't he afraid that young Master Chu will take revenge on him? So many people were detained. Won't their parents come after Chu Yifeng? And have you heard? The speaker suddenly lowered his voice, becoming mysterious. He looked around, ensuring there was no one else nearby. Before continuing, I heard that Chu Yifeng was saved by Yan Feng. Yan Feng? Everyone gasped in surprise. Then the crowd fell into thought. No wonder he dared to call the police. Probably it was Yan Feng who reported it for him. So is Yan Feng now in conflict with young Master Chu? Excitement flickered in their eyes. Chu Ziyu and Yan Feng were both considered the toughest figures in the school. They had been rivals for a long time. For so long, the two had coexisted without conflict. Now they had finally clashed. Hey, good morning! Yan Feng's light voice came from behind me. I turned around, a smile naturally appearing on my face. Good morning! After greeting me, Yan Feng walked past me, heading toward his classroom. Yan Feng and I were in the same grade, just in different classes. The bustling classroom suddenly fell silent. When I walked in, many people had witnessed Yan Feng greeting me in the hallway just now. The others were now even more convinced that I must have latched onto Yan Feng. Before the gossip could fully unfold, a figure appeared at the classroom door. Chu Ziyu stood there, glaring at me, his eyes filled with uncontrollable hatred. He could clearly feel that his sister's attitude toward him this morning was colder than usual. Unable to contain himself, he sneered. Yo! I thought it was someone important. Turns out it's just you lowlife. I was heading to my seat when I heard Chu Ziyu's voice. I turned around and coldly looked at him, seeing that I dared to look him in the eye. Chu Ziyu's anger immediately flared up. Chu Yifeng, it's been 2 days. You've gotten bolder, huh? Is your skin itching again? Seeing him hopping around in anger, I suddenly found it a little amusing. It felt like watching a clown perform. What's the matter? Didn't your mom's dream of occupying the magpie's nest fail the other day? Now you want to spend a few days in the police station? Chu Ziyu instantly flew into a rage. Who are you calling a magpie occupying the nest? Hearing their conversation, the others gasped. Could it be that Chu Yifeng had grown a pair of bear's heart and leopard's guts today? He actually dared to speak like this to young Master Chu. After all, he's the eldest son of the Chu family. In this class, young Master Chu is the richest. Even their parents have to smile and fawn when they see the Chu family's young master. And this kid dared to speak to Chu Ziyu like that? Does he not fear Chu Ziyu's revenge? Because we all know that Chu Ziyu always pays back his grudges. If someone offends him, he can easily ruin their entire family in a minute. They wouldn't even be able to stay in Nanchang. Hey! I looked at him with a smirk. You're an adopted son of the Chu family, taken from an orphanage. And now you're using despicable methods to push me, the real Chu family heir, out. Isn't that just occupying the magpie's nest? Have you been living in the Chu family for a few years, and now you think you're the real young master of the Chu family? Once I said this, it immediately caused a huge uproar in the classroom. Chu Ziyu was even more shocked, his eyes wide in disbelief. What did he just say? How dare he say that in school? The classmates in the classroom were in an uproar. Did I hear that right? Did he just say that Chu Ziyu was adopted by the Chu family? He said Chu Yifeng is the real Chu family heir? Is that true or not? How could Chu Yifeng, that disgusting guy, be the Chu family's real eldest son? I only know that the Chu family has Chu Ziyu, their biological daughter, and that was publicly announced by the Chu family. When did they suddenly have Chu Yifeng, a so-called young master? That's right. My dad mentioned this recently. He said the Chu group even has shares under Chu Ziyu's name. The Chu family spoils him so much. He can't possibly be adopted. Chu Yifeng must be lying. If he was really the Chu family's son, how could he be living in such a poor condition? Exactly. No one would neglect their biological child and love an adopted one more. But this kind of lie, if the Chu family steps forward, it'll be immediately exposed. It could even. In the classroom, the classmates' expressions varied as they discussed and speculated about the possibilities. More people were worried. Everyone knew that. If I was lying, it would be easy to expose. I shouldn't be that foolish, right? So, does that mean Ziyu has been relying on the Chu family for all these years? Many people must have bullied me just to please Ziyu. Now this thing came up. The way people looked at Ziyu changed instantly. Turns out, they had been hugging the wrong leg all along, mistaking a log for a pearl. Many more in the classroom were watching with the attitude of eating melon and enjoying the drama. After all, this was a shocking scandal from a big, rich family. Many people immediately grabbed their phones, recording the tense moment between the two of us. Some even started live streaming, hoping to go viral, to become an internet celebrity. Soon, a headline about the Chu family's young master accusing Ziyu of being a fake heir shot up on trending topics in the live stream. Because of this story, many people rushed in to watch. Some of them were from the wealthy circles. After a moment of shock, Ziyu saw everyone pointing their phones at him. He quickly reacted, putting on an expression of disbelief and hurt as he looked at me and said, "What are you saying? You little scum, how dare you pretend to be the Chu family's young master? You think you can get rich by using this method?" As soon as he said that, the tide of discussion and criticism quickly shifted toward me. Soon, another headline surfaced online. A vain student slanders the Chu family's young master, trying to get money, along with their pictures. Netizens couldn't tell who was telling the truth and who was lying. I couldn't help but laugh in frustration. Ziyu really thinks he's been bullying me for so long. He thinks he can slander me, and I won't dare to fight back, afraid that the Chu family won't be happy. Since you're saying that, why don't we call the police? Once the police investigate, they'll know exactly when and where you were adopted by the Chu family from the orphanage. Ziyu's face instantly turned pale. His fists clenched tightly, so tightly that his knuckles turned white. Suddenly, a flash of light appeared in his eyes, as if he had thought of something terrifying. Incredibly, he pointed at me and said, "Shu Yifeng, so you were doing this to satisfy your vanity? And you even bribed the police? You're truly despicable." As soon as these words were spoken, the crowd exploded again. Some speculated that Shu Yifeng had bribed the police, meaning he was deliberately picking a fight with the young master, hoping to provoke him into calling the police, and then use fake evidence to discredit the Chu family, thereby humiliating the Chu family to take revenge. Hearing the discussions, Ziyu's lips curled into a smug smile. He merely said I had bribed the police, but he didn't say exactly what the police had done for me. All this was just rumors being spread by these foolish classmates. By saying this, he was cleverly planting doubt in the minds of the Chu family. They might start wondering if the surveillance videos they saw the day before were tampered with by the police I supposedly bribed. The Chu family is known for their wild imagination, and this was something Ziyu was very familiar with as he reveled in his victory. He didn't notice the figure standing by the classroom door. Wanning had waited outside my dorm room the whole morning yesterday but never saw me. When she couldn't reach me by phone, she decided to come to the classroom to find me today. She wanted to get to the bottom of the situation, to find out whether Ziyu really hit me, and whether the surveillance videos her parents had seen were real. Before entering the classroom, she overheard the commotion from outside. This time, she didn't rush in to support Ziyu, but instead stood outside the classroom quietly, listening to their conversation. Wanning quietly absorbed what she heard, her eyes widening in disbelief. Ziyu was saying, although my parents indeed publicly declared that Ziyu is their biological son, they never stated that Yifeng isn't their child. When my parents asked me not to say I was a Chu family child at school, it was to protect Ziyu. But why is Ziyu now openly denying that Yifeng is the Chu family's young master in front of outsiders? Who gave him the audacity to do that? Wanning couldn't hold it in anymore. She strode directly into the classroom. Her appearance immediately quieted the noisy classroom. When Ziyu saw Wanning, His heart tightened. She couldn't have heard what I just said, could she? She must not have heard it. If she had heard about my conflict with Chu Yifeng, she would have rushed in to defend him right away. Chu Ziyu thought to himself, and he finally relaxed. Without waiting for Chu Wanning to speak, he quickly stepped in front of her, grinning as he said, "Big sis, what are you doing here?" The moment Chu Wanning appeared, the classroom erupted in whispers again. It was none other than Chu's eldest daughter, the youngest manager of Chu Corporation, Chu Wanning. She was the model of their generation, the kind of person their parents often spoke of, the perfect child of someone else's family. But she was so busy with work, no one had ever really had the chance to interact with her. To think that she would come to school personally, just to check on Chu Ziyu. Looking at the awestruck gazes from everyone, Chu Ziyu's pride swelled even further. He intentionally moved closer to Chu Wanning, speaking affectionately. "Big sis, you're so busy. How do you still have time to come to school and check on me?" With that, Chu Ziyu pretended to be strong and said, "Don't worry, big sis. I'm feeling much better now. I'm fine, really. You don't have to worry about me." Sure enough, seeing his familiar, affectionate demeanor, everyone around cast admiring looks at him. At the same time, many people turned their gaze toward me, wondering how I dared to even think about getting involved with the Chu family's young master. Now that the Chu family's eldest daughter was here, they were eagerly waiting to see how I'd be embarrassed. The livestream was filled with mockery. The view count skyrocketed. The comments were endless. There were all kinds of things being said. I didn't want to pay attention to these idle people. I simply walked back to my seat. Taking out my papers, I focused on studying diligently. 2 years felt too long. I wanted to graduate quickly and leave behind all the faces of the Chu family and their drama. I didn't want to see them for even a second longer. Chu Wanning frowned slightly. She glanced at Chu Ziyu with a calm expression. Unlike usual, she didn't immediately shower him with warmth. Instead, she subtly took a step back. Chu Ziyu, lost in the praise of others, didn't notice the change in Chu Wanning's demeanor. He strutted around like a proud peacock, accepting the flattery with a smug smile, occasionally pretending to be humble and gracious. With Chu Wanning's presence, the crowd quickly forgot about what I had said earlier. They crowded around the two of them, fighting to get a chance to show off in front of Chu Wanning. Chu Ziyu noticed the impatience in Chu Wanning's eyes, so he quickly stepped in front of her. "What are you all doing? Don't scare my sister." The crowd, seeing this, hurriedly tried to please Chu Ziyu, hoping to get a chance to approach Chu Wanning. This was exactly what Chu Ziyu wanted. He thrived on others' admiration and flattery. It made him feel like the legitimate heir of a wealthy family. He truly held power and influence. Just as the crowd was getting louder and more chaotic, another figure suddenly appeared at the door. Her entrance immediately stirred the entire classroom. It was none other than Liu Ryan. Her appearance made everyone in the room excited. She was the #1 beauty of the school. Liu Ryan had come too. I heard she was also the fiancée of the Chu family's heir, the future daughter-in-law of the Chu family. Chu Wanning listened to the murmurs around her. Her brows furrowed slightly. The future only daughter-in-law of the Chu family? And they even thought that Liu Ryan had been betrothed to Chu Ziyu. But the Liu family was just a small, not very influential family. What was going on here? My father was grateful to the Liu family for their great kindness. They arranged my engagement with Liu Ryan, who was just a few months old, before she was even born. Over the years, because I wasn't treated well at home, even Liu Ryan, my fiancé, was overlooked by them. But what's certain is, I was the one engaged to Liu Ryan, not Chu Ziyu. Because at that time, the Chu family didn't have Chu Ziyu yet. The Chu family adopted him when he was 8 years old. After Chu Ziyu was adopted, the Chu family had 2 young masters. How could they say that Liu Ryan was the only daughter-in-law of the Chu family? There is no only son-in-law in the Chu family. Chu Ziyu, noticing the astonished looks from everyone, turned around and saw Liu Ryan standing at the door. A big smile immediately appeared on his face. Liu Ryan, what are you doing here? He greeted her warmly, enthusiastically walking toward her. Liu Ryan, looking at Chu Ziyu's smiling face, blushed slightly. She said to him, I heard that the eldest lady has arrived, so I came to have a look. Chu Ziyu crossed the crowd, expertly taking Liu Ryan's small hand in his, and gently said, Liu Ryan, I'll introduce you to my sister. Seeing their hands tightly clasped together, Chu Wanning furrowed her brows tightly. What's going on? Liu Ryan was clearly Yi Feng's fiancé. Yi Feng was still here, yet they were so intimate. Chu Wanning turned to look at me, and saw that I was focused, seriously reading my test paper. With only the paper in my eyes, as if everything happening around me had nothing to do with me. We had been siblings for so many years, but this was the first time Chu Wanning truly looked at me and realized how much I had grown. It was just that my cheeks were too thin. Over the years, I had indeed suffered a lot at the Chu family's hands. Chu Ziyu brought Liu Ryan in front of Chu Wanning, smiling brightly as he introduced her. Sister, this is my girlfriend. Liu Ryan, your girlfriend? Chu Wanning frowned. She looked at Liu Ryan and asked, Liu Ryan, are you Chu Ziyu's girlfriend? Liu Ryan nodded slightly. Yes, big sis, I'm Liu Ryan. And I'm Chu Ziyu's fiancé.